Welcome back to Whitt Acres. Today we're doing the May garden tour. We actually have a beautiful, We actually have a beautiful day today. It's almost 80 degrees and sunny all day long. We are expecting some rain for the next 4 days, so that's why I'm trying to get the garden tour done today. I've been doing a lot of weed whacking, trying to get everything looking nice as these blooms are coming up. The rhododendrons are in full bloom and the irises are popping open all over the property, so there's a lot to show you. Pop, you ready for a garden tour? Come on. Now the blue fescue right here really does need pruned. I kind of like whenever it seeds out like this, just for a little bit, but I don't want it to actually go to seed and spread everywhere. So I'm gonna have to come in here, collect all this up and prune all these blue fescues back. The creeping Charlie kind of got in here and took over all my dianthus, but it is still blooming in there, and the creeping Charlie has a kind of purple bloom with it, so it's not too bad. But it's not too clean either. We also have the bright green lime hosta here in the pot recovering after it got frosted. It's one of the only things I actually have that got affected by the frost this year. We've really had a mild winter this year. It looks like the hooker is going to start putting on its blooms. It's not just a foliage plant, it does have tiny little frilly blooms. And I think it adds a nice little delicate flower to the garden. Pop. I did do a lot of weeding in the different gardens, but it's not all done. There is some still in here, and I have to cut back the daffodils still. But the white filigree hosta is doing really good here. It wasn't doing too well in the front garden. And we're gonna go out to the front garden and work our way back here. Come on, Pop. Out here in the front, we have a big dianthus here on the corner blooming beautifully with all that pink. This is one plant we usually have to protect from the late frost, but this actually did really well this year. It loves the warmer weather. I have a lot of these volunteer oak trees here in the front garden that I want to dig up and move around the property, but I haven't got to those yet. I did get my ornamental grass pruned back just in time. It's growing up fast. Oh, and I didn't even know I had a columbine blooming out here. I didn't plant this one. It must have reseeded out here. That is always nice to see. It's actually surrounded by a bunch of peonies. I was hoping they were going to open for this garden tour, but maybe they'll be open for the end of the month garden stroll. There's a lot of peonies that are going to be opening up. Here in the front garden by the mailbox, I also have a volunteer sassafras tree. I don't know how it got here really, but I'm really lucky to have it. I want to move this over where it can get a lot bigger. Down below it, I have a chameleon ground cover that's coming in nice and full. It's spreading out a lot in the last couple years. It has green, red, and yellow. I just thought it was a really nice, interesting ground cover. And I think it will put off a bloom as well. I'm not actually sure which type of bloom this is. This might be a crocus. But over here's a creeping phlox. It was blooming a lot better earlier, but I can't get everything blooming in its prime. The hosta at the base of the mailbox is filling out nicely, and the clematis is all the way to the top and past the top of the trellis here. And I do see some buds starting on this thing. I have another creeping phlox over here, a little bit deeper pink, and another ornamental grass right behind the clematis, because it is said that the clematis like their feet shaded. So you typically want to plant something tall right beside them so the roots are shaded. The farm stand is all set up right now. I have a few things here for sale. I don't get a lot of business, but we don't have a big town here. Echo pup laying there in the shade in the front yard. I did get the front yard mowed, but I want to mow again today while it's dry. So we don't have many blooms out here in the front garden right now. All the purple hyacinth, or Spanish bluebells as some people were calling them, they're all finished up out here. But I do have some volunteer oak trees that I'm going to be wanting to dig up. All these are planted by chipmunks and squirrels, so I want to move these onto the property because they're really good sizes right now. They're all 4 to 6 feet tall, and I have a lot of them. I just love getting free plants. I planted all my Royal Empress trees from seed, and this is the biggest one that I have on the property right now. I never actually chopped this one down like I did the others. This one's just starting to leaf out now. It's looking really healthy. Unfortunately, this one did not bloom this year. I was hoping we had a bloom since we had such a mild winter, but it's still young, so I'm still waiting for its first bloom. It is getting massive though. This trunk is about 1 foot in diameter at this point. I have a ring of hostas around it. The daffodils are all finished up, and so are the blue hyacinths that were over there. Looks like I'm getting some sprouts here. Got to break these off. Don't want any suckers coming out of the ground. But look at this trunk. I don't know if a buck rubbed it at one point, but this thing is healing beautifully. I love the character it has right now. But this is a massive tree. It's actually the world's fastest growing tree. I think if I'm remembering correctly, it's actually its 5th year that it's going into, and it can take up to 7 years to mature to flowering age. Coming out to the corner here, we have another multi-trunk volunteer oak tree that I want to dig up and move around. I didn't actually do too much weeding out here in the front, as you can see. And my Sarah Smile Rose is not looking too good at all. It looks like something's been eating it. I think it was the deer that ate my oak leaf hydrangea, but I do see some new shoots coming up, so hopefully they're done eating it. I really want that thing to get big right here. But I have a lot of work to do out here in the front garden. I'm really just trying to maintain it right now before I come in here and do a big turnover on it. My dad had a big hedge of these arborvitaes, and for some reason they all just keep dying. You can see this one's starting to get some brown in it, and that's what they all have been doing for the past few years. They just start getting brown in the spring, and then they completely turn brown in the summer, and then they're dead in the fall. He had 10 or 12 of them going down the row here, and it was a nice hedge block for the road and the neighbors. And I really wish it survived, because that would be a nice green backdrop. But now I'm gonna have to plant a new hedge. And yeah, I know you saw it. That's my neighbor's oak tree. Huh, Pop, you just sitting in the shade. You enjoy garden tour day? You just hanging out while I walk around and talk about plants? Good boy. I am happy to see all the limelight hydrangeas coming back nice and full. And my new oak tree I planted last year is alive. And the Cleveland pear tree put on a lot of growth this spring. I did get some weeding done here in the side garden, so it's looking pretty good with its mulch. The daisies here are getting huge. They're actually getting too big for my Bobo hydrangea. I need to come in there and cut those old blossoms off. Unfortunately, it looks like only one of the salvias down here survived. And I think it's about time for the first prune here on the corkscrew willow. I took a small branch off the butterfly bush in the pollinator ring of the vegetable garden, and that is what's been growing here for the past 3 years. It has been loving its location. I planted 6 small lupin here that my friend started from seed and didn't have room in his garden for, so I planted them right here just to see if they'd come back, because the lupin are perennial and they need to actually grow a full year before they bloom. Whenever you look at a pack of lupin seeds and see when the bloom time is, it says 365 plus days. But I had 6 here and only 1 came back after winter, so I don't know what color this one is, but his lupin is pink, so I'm hoping this one is pink because all of mine are purple. Lupin is a perennial, but it's not a long life perennial, so it only lives about 4 years and it takes a whole year to bloom. So you only get about a 3-year cycle of blooms from it, but it's totally worth it. You need lupin in your garden. And they reseed pretty readily, so you get little babies from it. Not a lot of color here in the side garden. No real blooms are going to be coming in until the peonies open up. But I did get in there and do some weeding, so everything's coming up without the weeds around them. And I think the contrast of the perennials are pretty nice, even without any blooms. I'm not sure what happened with my blue Atlas cedar. I thought it was looking good this year, and now I'm looking at it and it looks dead. There is definitely new growth on this. Does this thing shed its needles? Am I just not remembering that this thing goes bald? It's a blue Atlas cedar, so some cedars go bald. I don't know, we'll have to see what that new growth does. Over here on the side of the side garden, we actually have this big yellow bush that's looking gorgeous right now. You can see the scalloped little yellow blooms with a little red dot in them. I think it's just gorgeous. It's not a common plant that I see in a lot of people's gardens, but this is a Scotch broom, and we had a red one and a yellow one, but the red one actually died. So we just have this yellow one for now. But I really like this plant, and I just made an arrangement with this plant in it, and it really looked nice. So I might have to get some more of those. Unfortunately here, the deer ate one of my yews. What is this? Is this actually, it's not Solomon's seal. Is this a weed? What kind of weed is that? It looks a little different. But anyway, the deer ate one of my yews here, so that's gonna take a really long time to come back. This one's still alive and doing okay, but they topped it a little bit. But since those got eaten, I don't think those are gonna recover and grow fast enough to be my evergreen hedge on this side of the house. But I'll leave them there for now until I figure out what to do with them. It looks like the lamb's ear down here is gonna bloom. Nice and soft, and it has the stalks on it, so the blooms are coming. But for the rhododendron, the blooms are here. This thing is just gorgeous every single year, and the bees are all over it. My grandma had a lot of these at her house growing up, and whenever we'd go up there, I'd always call them bee bushes because I didn't know what they were called, and they always had bees on them. There is another big mature one back there, but we need to cut that lilac down more to see it. Down here at the foot of it, we have our variegated hostas and the variegated Solomon's seal. I think it's done blooming, but the hostas will be blooming here in the summer. Of course, they'll be purple because this is the purple and white corner. The white dogwood is finished blooming, but does have white Shasta daisy down here for the summer and some more hostas for the purple. And you can see the white azaleas finishing up here, petals on the ground. This is actually the rhododendron I'll come back here and cut for arrangements because you can't see them all, and there's so many blooms back here. Look at this back here. They just keep on going, and we can't see any of these from the house. You gotta come back here behind the compost in the weeds and the thistle to see all these blooms. Look at that. It's a lot of gorgeous blooms you can't see. Speaking of which, look at the Chinese snowball bush. Look at these clusters. They're massive this year, and there's a ton of them. but there's grapevine growing over it, and I need to get all this grapevine out of here. One of my neighbors has grapevine, and now it's plagued our whole property with these. But back here is one of the only places that the Dame's Rocket grows wild, so I actually get these for cuttings and arrangements too, because we get the purple and white Dame's Rocket back here. Dame's Rocket looks a lot like Phlox, but it has 4 petals, and Phlox has 5. That's one way to tell the difference. Now, Pop, you doing some weeding back here? Good boy. But yeah, look at all these flowers back here. It's gorgeous. And a volunteer lilac tree. I could move that into the sun. It's a process making nice gardens. Now, we kind of ran across the side of the property there, but before we get to the back gardens, I want to show you the hosta bed. Your ball, Pop. Here on the north side of the house, or pretty much the front of the house, I have a hosta bed and some rhododendrons. This one's doing really good on the corner. It's getting massive. It's the one with the blue edges on it. My purple passion rhododendron's in full bloom right now. It's actually a little bit wilted because we had a hot day today. And then further down on the other side of the lime hostas, we have the Holden rhododendron, which is just a beautiful bright pink over here, which I think just looks great with all the green from the hostas. And the hosta bed itself is full. I didn't get to actually splitting any of these hostas like I wanted to this year. This is actually the 4th year for this Empress Wu hosta, and you can see the flower stalk already forming on this one. It's going to be massive. You can see how big the plant is, just completely draping over all the other hostas. I have a whole nother color line over here. You can barely even see them at all underneath that. I'm going to have to prune back some of those big leaves. And maybe add a little water to my pollinator bath. The fern's up as well, and all the hostas are filling in all the gaps here. I didn't even mulch this area, and you can't even tell. I did mulch down there because it's all wide open, but this area is all covered up. I might just need one bag for some of these negative spaces in the pathway. But I really like the way this area turned out. I do want to separate some of those hostas and move them around the property, but I still want to keep it nice and full in here. All right, we'll go around back. You ready, Pop? All right, now we'll head to the back gardens, and here at the greenhouse we have our first batch of irises. This iris here is what I call a funeral iris. It probably has a real name somewhere in greenhouses where they sell it, but here at Whitt Acres we call this one the funeral iris. It's a beautiful color, but it has very morose tones. I actually need to get a root off of this one for a friend after it's done blooming because he likes this color. I'll show you what I have inside the greenhouse at the end. We'll head down to the vegetable garden now. I didn't get all the yards mowed like I said. I just got the front yard mowed and the side yard up there mowed, but it was raining when I was doing it, so it was really clumping up. So today with all this nice sun and wind, I'm hoping it dried up enough I can mow tonight. Down here at the garden entrance, I do have some hostas popping up on this left side. They're gonna add some summer color later on. We have a calla lily that's actually gonna be a nice big one here at the entrance, and an iris behind it, but it doesn't look like it's gonna be blooming this year. Over here on the corner, we have one of the lupins that I transplanted from the pond bank. This is one of the ones that volunteered from the big, beautiful lupin we had on the pond bank for a few years. Last year was its final year, so it didn't come back. So it's nice to have some of its volunteers living on. The rising sun redbud tree's done blooming. I'm not sure why it looks all beat up right now. Maybe it got affected by the frost a little bit too early on. It's nice to see right here that one of my hibiscuses are coming back. This one should be nice and big this year. I'm hoping to see more stems pop up. I did do a lot of weed whacking here coming into this garden tour, so you can see the edges are pretty nice right now. And I did knock down a lot of the weeds there in the cut flower garden. I just weed whacked them down because I just wanted to give some sunlight to all the perennials that are coming up. I'm not sure how that one's going to turn out yet this year, but it's not a priority. Inside the vegetable garden here is though. We have a beautiful hedge of hostas coming up on this right side, just giving a nice green feeling to the garden. The pollinator ring has so much growth in it right now. The butterfly bush actually needs a good prune back before it starts blooming. It's taken over all my lilies. I actually have a lily down in here, and there's gladiolas in here as well that aren't getting any sunlight. So that butterfly bush needs a really good prune back. I threw a bunch of seeds down here to grow some greens next to the onions, so we're gonna see if those start popping up here. I think they might be popping up already, but it looks like a chicken or something came in here and scratched that area. It's either a bunch of greens or a bunch of weeds. We just have to wait and see. But look what's doing good, the peas. My main headache right now is trying to get the patch ready for the giant pumpkin. I tried rototilling it. I did get one pass all the way across, and then it just kept sputtering out and dying, so I wasn't able to finish. My brother was a mechanic, so I have him look at all my engine problems. This was my grandpap's tiller, so it's pretty old. We didn't even know if it ran whenever I got it, but he looked at it and he said it needed new carbs, so he ordered that, and that's gonna come Wednesday. But I think I'm gonna bring down some compost from the barn and actually build my mound here so I can get my pumpkins in the ground. And then whenever the tiller gets up and running, I can till everything up to the mounds, and then then let them grow across the nice soft soil. But right now I feel like they're getting too big for their pots in the greenhouse. It's nice to see this Royal Empress alive, but I do need to do some pruning on this. I don't want it growing out like that. I'm probably just going to keep the 3 main trunks that it has and then cut everything else off of it and get in there and clean out the weeds. This ground cover is just taking over everywhere around the property. Since last tour, I did get the squash mound all weed whacked down, and I got the compost that was left over from filling the raised beds up on top of there so I can start leaching in all the nutrients into the soil. And then I got all the mounds of mulch spread out here across the bottom, giving the trees a nice layer of mulch around them. I did weed whack all the thistle off the top of the mound, but now all the pokeweed's coming up. So once we get the tiller running, I actually want to run it across the top of the squash mound and try and flatten out the cap. That way when it rains, more of the water actually runs into the soil than just running off and down the hill. I think that'll end up helping the plants out a lot on the hill. Here in the straight beds, we have more onions coming up. I think these ones are all the red onions, but we have a lot of volunteer sunflowers coming up in these beds, and I actually want to try and transplant these. These are in really soft soil, so it's not too hard to get the roots out of there and plant it somewhere else. And they're actually going to have really strong root systems, so I don't want them actually taking up space in my raised beds. And there is a good bit of them coming up in the beds here. I think this is even a bunch more. And I guess there was a potato in the compost too. Look, this is a potato growing in my raised bed. I might actually just leave that one go. I still have yet to get my potato row in the ground. But we do have an iris blooming out here in the cut flower garden. Look at this pretty little thing. Look how much intricate designs inside. Beautiful. It's a nice day, so Mumbles and the ducks are out at the pond and foraging through the field making mud puddles. Huh, Pop? You're hunting moles, huh? You got to get those moles and voles before I get my potatoes in. I mean, if you look closely, there's sunflowers coming up everywhere. Sunflower, 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 sunflower. That's kind of what's stressing me out right now. We have a lot of volunteers popping up on the property, and I usually like to take the time to go in there and transplant them around the property, and that gives me a lot more color around without actually having to start a bunch of seeds. I love using volunteers here in the garden. Would you look at that? This is a mushroom about to pop up. Hey, little buddy. You're pretty firm. Is that another one? You already split. Oh, you did. You split today on a hot day trying to push up through the wood chips. Oh, there's another one. That's the benefit of using wood chips. You have a bunch of mycorrhiza fungi underneath the soil. I wish these were edible. I'd love to get a lot of mushrooms started around the property, like wine caps and oyster mushrooms. But you know, it's a process. Come on, pup. We're going to skip the pond for now and come over here to the island garden because there's a lot of different color over here. Over here in what I call the island garden, we have a lot of color coming up. My plan with this garden was to fill it with perennials so I have color all season long, and all I have to do is try and weed it and mulch it. I usually add a few annuals for some late season color, but I really don't have to in this garden. I got in there and tried to keep the weeds down just to accentuate all the flowers that are blooming right now. This one here is the only color of its kind here on the property. I don't have it split up anywhere else. That one's a little bit past its prime, but I think I used another one in the arrangement I have on the patio. But you can see how many stalks it has. It's going to be putting on color here for a while. I am fortunate that the purple allium is still blooming here as the irises are coming into color. This peach iris here is adding a nice pop of color from a distance. And right behind it, we have another purple iris coming up. So we have a lot of irises over here. This one here is another beautiful color. It has a very nice light purple to the tongue, but then it has very dainty yellow wings. There's actually going to be a lot of these blooming here. We have a cluster here and another cluster over here. I got a lot of my plants, especially these irises, from people's overflow in their gardens. So a lot of these irises were just roots, and I didn't know what color bloom they had. So I just planted them, and I've been waiting to see what color they turned out to be. And now that I know what colors they are, I can try and move them around and try and match them together and try and just make nice color palettes from them. Now I have a lot of these smaller yellow flag irises. These are a lot more invasive. You can see how they spread right over the wall. A lot of the bearded irises will keep spreading, but they'll do it locally from their root base. These flag irises reseed a lot better, so you can see how they just spread right over the wall and keep on going. So some of the irises are more invasive than the other ones. Look at this one. I'm not sure what color this one's going to be, but that is a chubby little cluster of blooms. This one back here is looking really beautiful with the bright orange, and it's really nice because how bright it is, we can see it from a distance because this garden's a little bit further away from the patio than some. More of the purple allium still holding on to its color, but we also have the purple irises over here next to the pathway. Here on the path, I would like to refresh this white marble and get the bricks all straightened out again. But here on the left side of the pathway, we have a nice full purple iris. This is actually a really nice true purple. Ooh, and it kind of smells like grapes. Now that's a delicious iris to have next to the pathway. And on the other side of the pathway, we have another one that's a little bit lighter and smaller, but it has a little bit more character to the tongue too. And no fragrance. But look how this one's lighter purple, and this one's a lot deeper purple. That one's nice. Now right above it is my favorite iris on the property. This deep, dark purple, almost black iris whenever it's opening up. It does lighten up to a nice velvety purple, but whenever it's just opening up here in a small cluster, you can see how dark and black it is. But this one is my favorite, and it's the only location that I have it in, so I'm hoping it does well and I can actually move that around and get it into a few other places. Right beside it we have more purple. This is a columbine, and I love these things. They keep reseeding around the property, and they do really well in wet areas, but also in really shady areas like this area we have here. We have a mature maple right above us, but we also have a hemlock back here and a bigger maple whenever the sun starts setting. What are you doing? What are you doing in my garden, puppy? Don't be messing anything up, Boyle. I need to come in here and prune this if that's still alive. This was my porcupine grass. Hoping that's still alive. I don't know, it don't look too good. Look at that, it looks like a bird's nest in there. Darn, I really like that grass there. I might have to get another ornamental grass for here that does better in the shade. Puppy, what are you doing in there, Boyle? All right, you do you. This is my other Empress Wu hosta. It's actually a year behind the one that's out front, and it doesn't get as much sun, so you can see it doesn't have its flower stalk yet, but that should still bloom this year. It's getting bigger and bigger every year. And the candy corn spirea is starting to put off some beautiful color already. It's not even blooming yet. And once that does start blooming, it is one of the favorites of all the bees. We have another volunteer columbine underneath there. I should probably move those into a better spot. There's a few things that could be moved into better spots over here. It's a process. But I came in here with the weed whacker and knocked down a lot of the weeds here so we could actually see what was coming up. And right here along the brick edgework, you can see the calla lilies are starting to pop up. And there's more down there and more over here. And the little bench area over here always looks the best whenever the rhododendron's blooming. This one actually has a lot more blooms to open up because it gets more shade than the other ones, so it takes a little bit longer, extending my rhododendron bloom season, which is nice. We'll come back over here to see the viburnum because this one's coming into full bloom too. Look at this. This was dug up and brought down from my brother's house in Buffalo. My dad dug it up and brought it down because my brother doesn't care about anything flowering in his landscape. But these are putting on beautiful white saucers of flowers, and they're just going to keep blooming here for a while now. It's filling out this corner of the island just beautifully. Hey broilers, we're just passing through, guys, not trying to scare anybody. You guys take it easy. We have the rhubarb blooming here. I really need to move this into a sunnier spot for it to actually do anything. It hasn't really grown in the past 2 years, so I need to move that into the food forest. I did clean up the back side of the island here, so we have all this lily hedge, but right behind it we actually have a fern coming up that I planted too close, and it's right inside of an astilbe. We have a couple of astilbe back here popping up, but they're actually too close to the lily hedge. I need to move those back so I can actually see them. This little red azalea is starting to finish up its bloom, and my plantain lily's popping up. I couldn't think of the name of this thing. This is not a hosta and it's not a peace lily, it's a plantain lily. It's just a little bit different. The bamboo marigold's coming up nicely, but I'm gonna have to prune back this forsythia to give it any space to grow up. And I'm gonna need to get this volunteer poplar tree out of here. It's just taking up too much root space next to this mountain ash tree. This ash tree's been doing really good the past couple of years, and we really don't want to disturb it too much. But that is a big tree, so I would like to try and dig that out with a backhoe and actually transplant it somewhere on the landscape. The next thing to bloom down here is gonna be the peonies. You can see them starting out. And the little ants are on them already trying to get their sweetness. I got this yard mowed, so it's not looking too bad over here. Underneath the poplar bed, I got it all weeded out, and along the driveway coming underneath the Norway maple. I got it all cleaned out, but I would like to get it all mulched with some black mulch. I think that would look good. It looks good weeded here and cleaned up, but I think it would look good with some black mulch contrast, especially underneath the trees here. Before we head down to the pond and then finish up at the greenhouse, we'll pop up here to the pergola garden. Now these plants up here just aren't waiting for me. I haven't been able to get in here and mulch yet, and I haven't even been able to get in here and prune back the perennials and the vines off of the pergola here. Got a lot of vultures in the air right now. There's 5 right there. 6. But But I'm running out of time here. I think this might be my next project, but I think I've said that before. On the pergola here, I have 4 main perennial vines. On the left is a red trumpet vine, and then we have a white clematis vine. It's actually a sweet autumn clematis. And then we have the honeysuckle here on this post, and then the silver lace vine, one of the fastest growing vines in the world. I have some maintenance to do on these, but I'm training them in different locations here, and they have different areas they're allowed to climb. The silver lace vine gets the most space. It actually has the whole extension of this archway we can walk under, and then it has the whole green wall here it's filling out. It's just not supposed to be on top. But I got a lot of this weeded out back here, and there are some dahlias popping up that my dad got planted, so those are good to have in because I didn't get any planted yet. But I do have some volunteer sunflowers coming up. And on this side of the pathway, we have calla lilies popping up, which I really love having the calla lilies because they're perennial here, and they fit in almost any of the landscape gardens I have, and they're really low maintenance. All I have to do is put them in the ground once and make sure it's weeded before they pop up. At the end of the calla lily row, we have gladiolas popping up, and we used to actually dig these up and store them in the garage over winter, and then I actually got lazy and decided to try them out and just leave them in the ground, and they ended up coming back. So now I don't dig them up at all, and they keep coming back bigger and bigger each year. And that's what I mean by it's a process. And then it looks like the blue star Amsonia is coming into its full bloom. This is actually a really nice plant. It can actually have brighter, more prominent colors if you get the pH right, but either way it has a nice green texture and puts off a nice bloom show too. Right below that we have more fungus. Look at that mushroom. And this one. Yummy. So I really haven't even been in the pergola garden here to get it ready for the spring, but we have some blooms coming and I would like to get it mulched in here. This is actually one of the biggest peonies I have. It's going to be a white one and the fragrance is just beautiful. Unfortunately, we have some poison ivy growing up in here, and that's a decent little vine. I'm gonna have to get my dad to pull that out. He doesn't get poison ivy, but I get it really bad. So I can't really touch the poison ivy. I usually have to spray poison ivy or I get it all over me. Gloves don't work either for me, and I almost touched it. This one is my arch nemesis in the garden. Ooh, and an elephant ear is coming up. I don't think I even planted that this year. That thing survived winter. That's awesome. Hump up. And we saw them before. We definitely have birds living in here. But the zebra grass is coming up. I really need to get in there and chop off all that old growth. And maybe try and get the sweet autumn clematis to climb up a little bit higher before it falls over. She's trying though. Oh, and it looks like the chipmunks left me another oak. Now inside the pergola here, I do have more plans. I am going to be trying to grow the gourds all the way up the sides of the trellis and then onto the ceiling so we have a nice privacy area in here. It'll feel a lot more closed off whenever it's full of green leaves. You can kind of get the idea over here in the corner from the silver lace vine taking over. I want to get the silver lace vine off the ceiling there, but you can kind of see the ambiance over here. Just a really fancy setting for a bird bath. And I almost can see the babies. Oh, and there's something living in there. But yeah, not a lot of blooms here in the pergola right now, but still a lot of growth to look at. I have a lot of plans here to make this into the jungle garden. I want some elephant ears and some canna lilies and then all the gourds covering the pergola. But that's also been my plan for the past couple years, and I never quite achieved my vision. But we're gonna keep trying. So now we'll come down here to the pond. Off to the side here, we have the biggest lupin on the property right now. This is one of the volunteers that came from the lupin on the pond bank, and it is just one of my favorite flowers to have here on the property. And this little bumblebee likes them too. So many flowers to choose from. This area is filled in a lot since last tour. We do have this giant weed here that I've been just looking at constantly and I haven't got in there to pull out yet. I know it's a weed. It's got to go. I just haven't got to it yet. But down here we have a hosta coming up. I don't know where this lily come from. I think it might be a memoir lily, but I don't think so because I thought I moved those somewhere else. I don't know where these lilies came from. Volunteers, I guess. And we did actually get a few poppies growing in here, so I can still call this the poppy bed. Oh, the geyser. And now for a quick update on what's going on here at the pond bank. I did get it all weeded out. I had to go in there and hand weed the whole pond bank because I did have a lot of volunteers popping up, especially over here by the pineapple that I wanted to keep. And the creeping Jenny has been putting on a lot of bright color. I've been loving that around the rocks of the waterfalls. This sedum down here actually is growing in really nice. I could actually probably take this whole backside chunk off of it and move that around in different locations and just let the rest of it keep growing. We've been getting a lot of rain lately, so a lot of the hair algae actually washes out of the pond. But whenever it rains, it actually gets a little bit more murky. So it's cleaner on top of the water, but it's a little murky underneath. Can still see the bass though. And you can see the koi there with the bass. We have Dorothy right there, the white one. We have Yang with the black dot and Goldie Hawn following up behind. At some point, I probably am going to get a replacement for Betty White. But before I get any more fish, I really want to add more pond plants. Echo Pup, what are you doing, bud? I weeded that area. It's a garden now. You're not supposed to be in the garden, buddy. Oh, the geyser. Oh, since we just turned around here, check out these pumpkins. I'm not really trying to brag about the system, but I left these pumpkins here all winter long and they just completely rotted in place, and then eventually they started sprouting their seeds here when the weather warmed up. So like I was saying, I'm getting a bunch of volunteers right now, so I'd love to come in here and separate these out and get them planted so they can keep growing on their own. Huh, Pop? But over here where Echo Pup was laying behind the gladiola that's coming up, I'm glad to see that's still alive and looking really healthy. We have volunteer sunflowers, but we also have the calendula coming up there. That's all the thicker leafy greens. And very tiny all around that rock, we have a bunch of volunteer portulaca coming up from reseeding from last year. So that's why I wanted to get in there and hand weed, because I wanted to save a lot of those volunteers coming up. On this side of the stream, we have some more volunteer sunflowers in a group right here. It's probably too late for these. It'd be best if I probably just thin these out instead of trying to separate them. But the massive lupin that we used to have here on the pond bank is diminished to its babies. These ones are probably 2 years old, but they're actually blooming a pretty nice cola right there. They get a lot of sun on this mound, and I think the lupin really like the sun. I think they're actually considered a woodland plant, so they'd probably do pretty good in partial shade, but they do really good here on the sunny pond bank. And this is a man-made pond. I built this whole entire pond myself, so it doesn't actually have water leaching into the bank here, so it's not a real pond bank. So the ground does dry out pretty good during the summer, but this is more of a spring, early summer plant. The rest of the year it's just green and the foliage starts dying back. The other volunteers that we have down here are the Chinese forget-me-not. These are going to be blooming a nice blue color. Oh no, my drink. These Chinese forget-me-not will be blooming a nice blue color, a nice blue that you can't really get on a lot of plants. That's a weed. So I always like to leave those go because the bees really like those too, and it gives me a nice early color that I don't have to start seeds for. I just always tell myself that I have to try and get them before they go to seed so I don't have a big mess here in the garden. But obviously I don't get them all. I already cut back this periwinkle vine a couple times, but I'm going to have to do it again. It just keeps growing into my succulent garden, my cold frame, and over the wall. I have the hens and chicks right here in the broken pot. It's starting to put on some deeper colors. And then the brighter green Semper Vivum down here survived winter. And is that a flower stalk I see? Maybe. These columbine are my original mother plants. I actually bought 3 roots. I planted them here and they did really well here on the pond bank, and they keep reseeding. As you can see, some little ones there in the middle. And those are the ones that I dig out and start moving around the property, and then they reseed from there. All part of the fun of perennials. Here in the cold frame, we are really filling out with some lettuce, peas, and radishes. The lettuce I've been actually feeding to the birds. They've been loving it. I gave a big bouquet of lettuce to Mumbles. She was really happy about that. But we have some peas here. I don't actually see any pods on them, but we have some blooms on the peas. These look like carrots growing up here, so we might actually get some carrots. And look at that massive radish. That thing is probably woody. I'm gonna have to give that to the pigs. But this tango leaf lettuce is gorgeous. This is probably what Mumbles dreams about. And up here on the patio pots, we have a bunch of volunteer snapdragons. These are all volunteer snapdragon seedlings. And these two over here did overwinter, and they're about to bloom. I left them in these pots all winter long, never really watered them, just left them get rained on. And you can see these 2 snapdragons are coming back, and they're gonna look gorgeous. So we have the flowers over here, and then we have all the seedlings in those pots. There's just so much going on right now in the gardens. Huh, Pop, you see birds? I didn't let the chickens out. Those chickens are always jumping fences. We haven't got the patio covers up yet, but we do have the gladiolas coming up in the bed here. Unfortunately, I don't see any seedlings for the vines. I was hoping to get some volunteers in here. Oh, the geyser! Over here on the ramp bed, the spiderwort and hosta is getting huge. We actually have a little bit of blooms coming from the spiderwort about to open. The penstemon back here in the corner is getting really big, and you can see the flower buds starting on top of this. I'm really happy to see that coming back. So I bought this penstemon as a plant, and I put it here. It did okay for the summer. I really liked it. It did reseed and have some babies, and that was a good thing because it didn't come back after winter, but some of the babies survived. So I transplanted one of the penstemons into this corner, and we're trying again with the penstemon. Look at these irises, just gorgeous. These are probably my second or third favorite iris. I really like the purple and the white combination, and a little bit of splash of yellow in there is not a problem. Whenever I first planted these, I thought they were all the same color, and I actually had a funeral iris right in the middle of these, so it ruined the whole look for a whole year. But after they bloomed for the first time, I was able to see which ones were the wrong color, and I was able to pull those ones out for a beautiful even bloom this time. Whoa, the geyser. What are you doing, Lucy? So I'm trying not to get my shadow in it, but the sun's right on my back. It's just a beautiful line of irises. So this ramp bed is just looking beautiful right now, looking down to the vegetable garden, and right here next to the beach of the pond, we have a gorgeous set of white and purple irises. And it's hard to really tell, but there's a lot more blooms on here. This is gonna be blooming for a while. You still got some shade, pup? Good boy. We'll finish this tour up here in the greenhouse. So right now the giant pumpkins are getting way too big for their containers. This one is actually doing amazing. It's almost as big as my hand. Maybe not quite as big, but I have a big hand. And then the seeds I got from my friend's pumpkin, they're all doing really well too. I think I only had one that didn't pop open, and they're all getting really big for their container too, because they're in a lot smaller container than this one is. I have some marigolds filling out this tray right now. A few zinnias here really struggling in that tray. I think I have the wrong soil actually to start seeds in that one. The cucumbers, the butternut squash in this one. We also have some tomatoes and basil. Some pineapple tomatoes down here, and some more marigolds just starting out. And then this is another tray of marigolds that I started in too heavy of soil, so they're not doing too well either. I honestly don't even remember what these are back here, so that's gonna be a nice surprise whenever they bloom. There's always surprises whenever I start seeds. Oh, the geyser. You did it, puppy. We made it to the end of the tour. Good boy. You've been working so hard. Yeah, you must be tired. Good boy. All right, that's gonna be all for this one. There's always so much to show you, especially this time of year. We're getting a lot of different iris blooms right now, which is just gorgeous. This is one of the times of the year that we have the most color around the property. So there's actually like 3 different times that we have a lot of color here on the property. One time is right now during iris season, and then we have lily season coming up, and then we have gladiola season later on. But there's a lot going on in the gardens right now, and I'm trying to bring you along at least once a month, usually twice a month, to show you a nice tour around the gardens. But that's going to be all for this one. If you want to keep following along with everything here at Whitt Acres, make sure to subscribe down below. Hit that like button before you leave, and you can see me and Echo on the next one. Thanks for watching. Good boy.